Live from Capitol Hill, it's war room impeachment. We're only yards away from where later today. Oops, that's not quite accurate because it's a Saturday. They're taking off. It's Saturday, the 1st of February, 2020. We're in episode 147. John Fredericks Radio Network, Salem broadcast throughout the nation. America's Voice.news, which is the streaming platform for the Trump movement. You can see all the rallies there, the pregame and the postgame, all the analysis, and of course, the war room. And you've got Newsmax TV now. It's 30 million homes. Jason Miller. You can tell it's Saturday. We're a little dressed down. When Jason Miller, the Natalie attired Jason Miller, who would make the best dressed person in the war room except his wingman is Raheem Kassam, is wearing the T-shirt.
It's a little bit of a look. We got past the witnesses vote, so it's a little bit of a celebration.
You're sending a signal to the White House, the president's time to take it down a bit. You got a victory there. Where did the first question I have for you? Where did January go?
It's February 1st. This is nuts.
Wasn't it just New Year's weekend we were coming back? Literally, what happened?
Well, I mean, in a lot of ways, it's like, where did October, November, and December go? This thing's been a roller coaster.
You and I have been through some pretty compressed time frames, like, in the last 90, 100 days of the campaign, the transition, all of that. But the White House years, I think this was the quickest month. It was like over in a flash. I've never seen the concentration now of major news. It seems like years ago, we were taking out General Soleimani, right? The whole Tehran situation. Now we got the pandemic, which I have a whole show. But literally, this is... One of the reasons we're doing this is to try to every day in one concentrated form give people, an idea. But we never thought we'd be here in February on doing war room impeachment.
No, and I wouldn't have thought that we would have been 3 Bolton book leaks into Book Deal Bolton's publicity tour, but here we are.
The third big one. And about the Bigfoot, the Iowa caucuses. Besides AOC, does anybody care about what's happening out there? Is this like no intensity? The mainstream media, they don't have the second. They get like the third or fourth team out there. It's like stringers that work for these major newspapers. There's no stories. There's no energy. It's not capturing anything. When MSNBC and CNN all day long are just showing the hearings, which I understand is historic, and of course it's the way they're going to take down Trump, but they don't even do split screen. With what, and I realize some of the major candidates happen to be here, but they're not even back there, walking into the little, what they normally do, walk into the little cafes, walk into the little coffee shops, walk into the living rooms of people getting ready to be caucus goers. None of that.
No, and I think there's really also a story to be told here about a testament to Bernie Sanders' organizational strength and his strength as a candidate, that he's making his move, his big push, without any real media attention. And this is all on the ground, hand-to-hand combat. But to your point about the media, they've already made this conscious decision where they're skipping Iowa, effectively. Now, now
walk the audience through that. Why do you say, well, I agree with that, but it's just my observation. Why do you say it's pretty obvious as a media expert they are?
Because it's too late. They're all focused on impeachment and the drama that's going on here in Washington. And so your typical curtain raiser stories, this is the lay of the land. I've been on the ground. So we had, say, for example, yes. David Drucker, the great David Drucker from the Washington Examiner in here the other day. And he said, for example, he's skipping Iowa because he's on impeachment duty, and so his real being on the ground, talking with voters. I love it, by the way, in the coffee shops in Iowa that have the T-shirts. Didn't I talk to you 4 years ago? Someone like David's already saying, I'm going to finish up with impeachment, then I'm going to go to New Hampshire, scramble to get that done. Now, New Hampshire's...
He didn't even commit to New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Right? He said he's going to try to. Because, by the way, this thing goes through Wednesday or Thursday. He goes out there and gets one weekend. New Hampshire's been literally... When I was a kid, New Hampshire was everything. Right now, New Hampshire is almost crickets.
Right, and so typically the way that it works is someone who wins either Iowa or New Hampshire, you got to win one of the early contests, they say, just to give you that credibility and go and continue.
You got to get a ticket out.
And sometimes that ticket just means finishing the top 3.
Yeah.
Sometimes, take a look at, Bill Clinton didn't actually win a state until Georgia.
Exactly. Comeback kid.
Right, comeback kid
finished a distant second in New Hampshire.
Yes. And in Iowa, that year was largely written off because of Tom Harkin being the home state senator. And so there are different pathways that come through. A lot of times, South Carolina becomes a big one for both on the Republican and Democrat side, which usually the biggest key to winning South Carolina is to win either Iowa or New Hampshire first.
Yes.
That's really kind of the...
Well, because you get money.
Right.
And media attention.
South Carolina could be a little bit different in the positioning just because of the larger African-American base, and particularly this is going to become the Joe Biden's last stand for South Carolina. But just taking the step back here, Normally, you get it. Whoever wins Iowa gets a massive bounce, a huge bounce, and it gives them the energy.
Because the media just completely focuses on it nonstop.
Right. And one thing I
It's
want
like Rick Santorum got stiffed there back in 2012 when they had the establishment did the count. Right. He won 2 weeks later, but it didn't matter.
Right. Didn't matter.
Romney won on the night of, and turned out, oops, we had a miscount.
So I try to put this in. Imagine you're getting on a trolley car or a subway car at the beginning of the presidential primary series, whether you're on the Republican or Democrat side, and you can't get off of that car or that train until the end of the line. So the first stop, Iowa, then New Hampshire, then this year for the Democrats, then you have Nevada, South Carolina. They start moving into some of the other states in Super Tuesday. The reason why I say that is imagine on that car, you have all the candidates, but you also have the National Press Corps. And so the only stops that they have, everyone reports the same thing, covers the same thing, looks at the same thing. So there's this momentum train, essentially, that you're getting on. That's why it becomes so important. But what we're doing here is effectively we're erasing that first stop in Iowa, because there's going to be no bounce coming out of Iowa, because literally the next day is State of the Union and then impeachment the day after that.
No, even if Bernie in this big surge, do you agree with me that the best thing that happened in Bernie was the impeachment trial to get Bernie back here, have the Bernie Bros with AOCs? I mean, she drew 6,000 people last week. She's kind of Obama-esque in the way she's a media personality out there.
She's really, I mean, look at Bernie Sanders. It's too soon for him to try to change the Constitution and lower the age.
Well, no. AOC. I think here's the way I think about it. Bernie Sanders is her third term. It just happens to be the first.
Right.
No, because she's running the next two. That she's taken over the part. If you watch the little get-togethers, and you see what happened in California, she takes the stage. It's her deal, right? She's on fire. Bernie Sanders is her third term. It just happens to be the opening one.
A couple of nights ago, when President Trump had his big rally in Iowa, he had something like 10,000 people. The thing was massive.
Guys were camping out for a week.
Joe Biden, in an event yesterday, had like 30 people. There were empty folding chairs in there.
First of all, the staff work's terrible.
Yeah.
Get rid of the chairs before it comes out. If you got 40 chairs and you got 30 people, if you don't have staff to fill them up, fold the chairs up and move them. Right? It's even his staff is not quite on it, because every time you look, there's always empty seats. Right, it just shows you you want to look in Iowa and it's overcrowded. There's guys standing outside the little VFW halls. You don't see that in Biden at all.
A couple of things on the Democratic primary that we saw yesterday. Also, there was a story out about Democrats conspiring to how they can steal the nomination away from Bernie at convention. Now, of course, the not so buried lead in there is this is all just early talk. There's not much to it, but there's talk. There is something to it. I mean, this is a very real thing, because the Democratic establishment that right now
is in panic mode.
They're hyper-focused on impeachment. They're realizing, our chosen one, Joe Biden, and if you watch Joe Biden on the trail, there's something off. I'm not going to get into too far into the conspiracy thing.
No, but there's that, and particularly if you time lock it during the day, the later in the day, it's just not on his game.
No, and just even his answers. I mean, look, take like a Peter Doocy, for example, from Fox News. Very solid reporter,
right.
Like him, hustles, asks very insightful questions, but he's not like getting cross-examined by Chris Wallace.
No. And he's not one of these guys that campaign trail jumps up with a thing in your face and asks you a cheap shot question. Very straightforward, good reporter.
Right. And in fact, one of my favorite reporters to follow on Twitter is Bo Erickson from CBS. Yep. And Joe Biden's flipped out at him a number of times. And he asks him questions, and Joe starts pointing at him and yelling at him. Like, it's really unhinged type behavior. In fact, one of the other funny thing that we saw yesterday, Rashida Tlaib, our favorite impeached.
The squad's out there.
The squad's out there.
Squad's out for Bernie.
They led this Bernie event in these anti-Hillary chants, and they're all booing Hillary. And I tweeted out, I was like, come on, who among us hasn't?
Yeah.
So I kind of wish I'd been there.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. Let's go to, so reset for the audience. We had two shows yesterday, and it still wasn't, we didn't even quite understand with McGinley here what was going to absolutely totally transpire, because there were so many moving pieces. Let's reset for the audience exactly where we stand. Since they took the day off, right? This is the first Saturday they've had off in a month. They took the day off. What have they agreed to?
Yeah. So is Jeffrey Toobin, my favorite legal analyst from CNN, so aptly put it.
By the way, a C student under Dershowitz, you can tell. It's not Jeffrey. You're just not with it, dude.
Jeffrey said last night on TV, Trump won. That's what the history books are going to say.
Yeah.
Trump won. End of story. So in
That went over well. I saw that one.
Yeah.
They were yelling at you.
That's when the earpiece is like, Jeffrey, this is Mr. Zucker.
Your contract. We were talking about your contract.
Yeah, we need Jeffrey. You're off message, directly to the earpiece. But here's what happened yesterday: they had all the up or down votes on witnesses, and they failed. Willard Mitt Romney reared his ugly head and was voted in favor of the witnesses. Susan Collins Susan Collins is going to Susan Collins. Also voted with him. I would say very noble stands by Lisa Murkowski, Lamar Alexander to be against it, to go and get through this. But we're now past the motion arama, or the amendment arama. So that's done. That's over. We've cleared the hurdle. The Senate is then off today and tomorrow. They resume at 11 a.m. on Monday, and there'll be closing arguments. So that's 4 hours total, 2 on each side. So we described that a little bit inaccurately when we were entering into Friday. So closing arguments are Monday. Then the Senate's going to adjourn until 4 o'clock on Wednesday. So what happens between somewhere late in the day, Monday, until 4 o'clock on Wednesday?
Well, they can't do it Tuesday because the security for the State of the Union. They put the Capitol on lockdown.
Yes, but during that stretch between, let's say, 6 p.m. Monday until 4 p.m. on Wednesday, so about 48 hours, in that stretch you have two big things. Number one, the Senate will resume regular business. This means that senators will be allowed to get up there and defend their vote one way or the other, and not all 100 are going to take it.
Oh, they're not going to do that as part of the trial.
Correct.
They're going to do this as regular Senate business.
Yes, they'll be regular.
Because they're jurors, and technically they don't get a chance to talk. So they're going to do, in Senate business, allow them to talk.
Correct.
And that's where they get 10 minutes each.
And, well, that's the early speculation. They haven't put out the exact parameters. And, of course, not all 100 senators are going to want to go. But I think a good chunk will.
Why would you not want to go in this historic moment?
Some of these guys don't like to talk. I know that sounds weird because the Senate, you assume with any politician they want to, but think about all the senators. I mean, we could bust out the list of all 100 right now.
Oh, there's 80 you never hear from.
Right.
Right now,
you just never hear.
from.
Or in all honesty, people don't really care to hear from. I mean, that's just, I'm being
brutally frank.
But I want to walk through, this is why this won't be the greatest news buildup for the president, because over this weekend, it's the mainstream media right now is completely triggered saying, Trump is destroying the country, tearing us apart. Democrats will be in Iowa. You're going to see a raft of preview stories that are coming out Sunday and Monday about, oh, hey, now we got to pay attention to Iowa. And in fact, right behind us, CNN is showing Tom Steyer. I forgot that guy was still in the race with his same old, plaid tie or whatever. He's there. But then, so Iowa's going to be Monday night. But during the closing arguments on Monday, so you're going to have this, the House impeachment managers hammering President Trump. Tuesday, in the run-up to the State of the Union, they probably shut the place down early afternoon because they have to clear it out, make the Capitol secure for the president, the whole 9 yards. The senator speeches are going to be hammering President Trump.
Right as the pregame show to the State of the Union.
Exactly. And then to step all over the president's State of the Union bounce. Normally you get some kind of bounce. Even President Trump gets a bounce. I mean, this will be what they call the dead cat bounce, which means there's no bounce at all. And then Wednesday up until 4 o'clock.
They get to counter it.
It'll still be senators doing their closing thing. So it's going to be this negative news flow that's coming at the president.
Do you think it's locked in, or would you still at this stage advise, hey, do it next week or do it on Thursday?
I would push the State of the Union. Absolutely.
Absolutely. You'd say, hey, look, let him go. Let's get the acquittal so you walk up there with the win, which is the only thing the history books are going to remember.
Right. And we called this, you correctly predicted this on Maria Bartiromo a few weeks ago, saying the New York Times headline will be Trump delivers State of the Union under cloud of uncertainty. Now, don't get me wrong. Some of those negative headlines will remain, even if you push it off 1 week or 2 weeks or whatever the case. So I don't want to go and be pie in the sky here. But in the middle, there's not going to be any reaction time or any time for any of that to get absorbed by the media. It's all just going to be, but impeachment, but you're under impeachment. I mean, every State of the Union headline is going to have impeachment or cloud of uncertainty or something like that all interwoven.
Now let's go back to the witnesses and the vote that Mitch and everybody won, McConnell won. It's not going to stop. You made the reference to the third book deal Bolton drop, but even with the vote on Wednesday, right? It doesn't. Thursday, it starts again. It's really, you can already see in the way that they're prepping it. It wasn't a real trial. You didn't have evidence. This is not a real acquittal. It's just going to go on, right? Do you think they'll actually subpoena Bolton? Do you think the House will start this process over again? Maybe not a full impeachment, but enough to actually have hearings and have Bolton look, Lev Parnas is hanging out, sans gold chain in the Senate cloakroom. He's off to the side where where they have those little offices. He's up there ready to go. He was ready to testify.
And this is why I said on the show the other day that Lindsey Graham, chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, needs to announce now that we're having hearings at the end of next week to bring in the so-called whistleblower number 2 who disappeared, Joe Biden, where's Hunter, Adam Schiff, and let's go on down the line. Because as soon as this thing is over, I wouldn't be surprised if literally the calendar docket pops up saying, here's House Oversight Committee, House Judiciary Committee, House Permanent Select Intelligence Committee, all of them. They're going to be going after, their first thing is they want to go after trying to break executive privilege. And they're actually doing that in the courts with Don McGahn, going back to the Russia hoax, going all the way back to that. The avalanche of subpoenas and investigative requests coming out of the House right at the edge of this is going to be stunning. And look, they're going to go for the long game because they think there's probably a good chance President Trump gets reelected. So let's go try to impeach him again afterwards. Maybe we can beat him in 2021. But I think the other thing we could see too, I think you could see a formal censure. And this is going to get this is why I get a little bit frustrated with some of our Republican allies who've had some biting criticism of the president in their remarks for how they're voting on impeachment, because all this is going to come back, and a censure vote could be a lot different than an impeachment vote.
Very concerning. Here's what I don't like about the way these things are structured in the State of the Union. The speeches from the Democrats for all 47 are going to be, because they are very focused, and they have a sense of kind of collusion or working together. That it's like you said, when they would ask a question the other day in the question section, they would walk up with the binder and say, "Oh, thank you for the interesting question. Can we go to slide 1?" Right? I mean, it was so boom. They knew exactly kind of the timing of the questions, the sequencing of the questions. They had all the audiovisual aids. They're going to use their time by the senators to set the narrative predicate for the going forward program. They're going to talk about no witnesses. You're just going to get drenched or covered in where they're going next, right?
So
to have Lev Parnas, to have Bolton. They want Bolton's notes. They just don't want Bolton's manuscript. They want the notes.
And there's a risk in that.
Now they want John Kelly.
Yes. And while there will be negative news cycles for sure. I mean, President Trump can barely get a positive news cycle as is. There's some real risks in this for the Democrats. So, for example, yesterday's tracking numbers for Rasmussen has President Trump at a 50% approval.
That's big.
That Washington Post ABC poll that came out last weekend showed President Trump at his highest numbers for his entire presidency. And his numbers have gone way up since the impeachment witch hunt started back in October. What Democrats have done is they have sacrificed all messaging for 2020 in favor of their radical infatuation with President Trump.
Orange man bad.
Right.
They've made it all. They haven't made it, but they have no personality except AOC, who's not eligible, and they really don't have any policies that are sellable. They kind of downplay. They play the policies up in the little debates that nobody pays attention to for the far left, but they don't amplify it. So there's no talk. There's no policy and there's no personality. It's all defeat Trump. They're not trying to win. They're trying to beat Trump.
Right. And so when you look back at 2018 when Democrats were successful, yes, the Democratic base was fired up at basically a presidential year turnout. But the issues they won it on pocketbook issues, the affordability of health care, wage inequality, climate change. You don't hear about any of these things anymore. It is all about we hate President Trump. That's everything with their messaging.
So what happens, you think, in the next couple of days, and tie it together with what comes out of Iowa? This is all going to converge, and we're going to get into the next section a little bit about the pandemic and other unfinished business. But how does this week is such an intense media week where you have, think about it, the Iowa caucuses, which are usually so totemic. It's just something the American political, business focuses on so intensely. It's kind of gotten second or third shrift. Then you've got a State of the Union, which in this town is like, because everything's driven by money, they want to see programmatically what you've got in there. Then a basically once in a lifetime, once in a generation acquittal of the President of the United States, all in 3 days.
Well, and just to throw more gasoline onto this fire, We also are assuredly going to be more leaks from book deal Bolton, which, by the way, you don't hear anything about Javelin or Bolton denials with any of these recent leaks. That was just back in the first one.
Crickets.
They try to be a little bit cute in their wording, but no, I mean, it's basically everyone knows they're leaking it and that's what's happening. But we also have the coronavirus. And the news on this is the media starts to make this pivot from now that they know that impeachment it's over. They want to write the stories to beat up President Trump, to try to damage him politically. But these reporters who typically follow the White House and political beats are now all shifting to the coronavirus. This is why yesterday's press conference by the Trump administration folks was so big. And this is where President Trump has the
press conference on the pandemic.
Yes, about what we're doing as far as with if you're a foreign
Because
national.
it's to show people the opportunity cost of what's happening, that the real world is now intruding into the phony world, the faux world of Washington.
And the juxtaposition of President Trump is doing real, massive global leadership things while the Democrats are worried about petty small ball. And this is, I think, a major shortcoming. If someone was smart on the Democratic side, they would be out there saying, here's what I would be doing on the coronavirus. This is something that I would have thought that Mike Bloomberg would have been doing. Let me tell you about someone who's helped New York recover things, someone who built a business, these things.
You mean why he would be out in front of this?
You would think he'd be out.
He's put $100 million into Johns Hopkins. It's called the Michael Bloomberg Center for Global Health, and it's probably the top in the world. It's kind of surprising. It's had this report that we've had up on the pandemic site from Dr. Toner, that once you read it, you won't go to sleep, because this is the one that says 65 million people killed, the world's economy craters, et cetera, and nobody's really poked holes in it.
But right now, President Trump...
President Trump's the one that's in leadership.
He's the one in the leadership. And this is where they've already started. We'll talk in the next block about State of the Union preview, but this is where I think President Trump has to take State of the Union to remind people of the big picture, global leadership things that we elected him to go and do, to juxtapose that against the small political nature of all the Democrats' messaging.
You've got to make this petty. You've got to make it look like petty. If they continue on, it's just vindictive, right? It's just pure vindictive. It's not about the business of the country, right? He's obviously not a clear and present danger. We've gotten past that. It's now time to get on the business of the country. You want to defeat him with candidates and policies, have at it. But you're saying you've got to do that in the State of the Union.
Right. It's hard to say that someone's a clear and present danger when they're talking about here's how we're either stopping people with the virus from coming in here or quarantining people. When he's doing the big picture things like this, then they can't go and make this a political argument.
Okay, Jason Miller, Stephen K. Bannon, we're going to return in a moment, talk more about the politics of 2016 and how the pandemic is going to play into that, into the impeachment and the race. We'll be back with War Room Impeachment 147 in a moment.
War Room Impeachment. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Here live in the War Room across the street from the Capitol with Jason Miller. Jason was the communications strategist, senior communications strategist and ran the comms department for the 2016 Trump campaign, the greatest come from behind in American presidential political history, and also was the communications director for the transition President Trump's administration. It is Saturday, the 1st of February. We are live everywhere with episode 147. Before we go into really the business of the world, which is this pandemic, I want to go back to some of the impeachment stuff. I want to refer to Jesse Waters. I think we're going to get this up today on the site. If we can ever get Raheem out. Raheem is still celebrating Brexit. It may be, he's like Nigel. It may be like a 3-day Brexit.
So I just assume, so sometimes, obviously everyone needs a day off every now and then. I just assume when Raheem's not here that he's out saving the Queen. And that maybe is Raheem, James Bond is 007. I just assume maybe Raheem is, like 008 or something like that.
008, exactly. Natalie attired. You see the Wall Street Journal's actually got, if you didn't see it last night, the celebration in Parliament Square was pretty extraordinary. I mean, finally, after 47 years, they have their freedom.
And look, our friend Raheem was, when you talk about in the front row of this, this is a massive seismic global event, and he was running all the press and communications for,
he was
the whole thing
when I went over there and I knew something was kind of up because after the Tea Party, and I'd been following this guy Farage. I went over there right after the 2012 defeat of Romney. And I realized that there's something out there that's changing. You can feel it, and this populist nationalist movement. I could sense it on the the readership of Breitbart. You could see it, and I said we've got to be at the forefront there. And I was told about this young guy, and Farage, and I went over and met him in January of 13, and you could tell. And Nigel Farage had at that time, last six years ago, he had been at this for almost 20 years. and this is for everybody in the audience, particularly the Trump people. When he first started, the polling showed it was like 2%. 2% of the people agreed. Remember, Margaret Thatcher was a big, Europe. She was at the beginning, to get into more of the European Union than, or more to the common market and get more integrated. It was only later that she got, cold feet when she saw the political union. But Nigel, when he first started, was 2%. And I mean, talk about more mocked and ridiculed than the Trump movement when it first started, right? As you guys are just, so it shows you if you have an idea and you believe in it and you can execute on it, a little bit what you just said at the start of the show. One of the things I admire about the Bernie guys is that they're relentless. They have been dismissed, patted on the head, and this is why they hate of course, on the right, I think we're tougher about how we hate the establishment and the conservatives. We've been in civil war for so many years.
Yeah, Mitt Romney, check my Twitter feed.
Exactly. So they're just getting to it. But once again, when they first started, they were such outsiders. And I think this is why, and to have Raheem, who was as inextricably linked with the whole Brexit movement as you were with President Trump's great victory, and all the work, all the labor in the vineyard you had done. Remember, this just didn't happen. Right, President Trump is a personality that has galvanized this and now become kind of a world leader of this. But these forces have been out there for many years. It takes personalities like a Donald Trump, like a Nigel Farage, that can channel it, articulate it, amplify it, and take it to the next level. That's why someone like AOC is quite important, right? And the way the right dismisses her and mocks her. Somebody sent yesterday a thing. They had her and a horse next to it. I said, "You guys are missing the point. She's got that. She's got that charisma." Now, look, I don't like her policies. Think she's dead wrong in all of it, but she's somebody to watch. But that's why this thing yesterday and to have these guys. I want to go back to you. That gets to the point of repeating things. Jesse Waters. And Jesse, I think, is as good as you got at Fox. He's fantastic. And they got a fabulous team over there. I think Jesse particularly is very, very astute, not just about politics, but about life and about how people come to stories. He had his lead last week on Waters War, which I watch religiously. He had, by the way, the pandemic is now in the war room officially. Cough in your sleeve.
It's a teaser for the next episode.
Exactly.
That's all it is.
It's here. The virus is here.
Yeah, we're owning the libs by actually getting coronavirus ourselves.
And living through it, getting more powerful, right? We're mutating. We're mutating as the show goes on. No, it's this thing about messaging and about Jesse said he had an 8-minute open to the show. And he says, and he goes, this after the first day, it was their first 2 hours on that Saturday. And he goes, hey, as close as I watched this, I found out new stuff today. And Jesse does an 8-minute where he's connecting dots, and it was brilliant. It's still the best tie together of everything I've seen. What it shows you, because here in the war room, we have a team that does nothing else but this, who are some of the smartest guys in the country. And we found out things, particularly the way things were connected on their defense. It is what it is, so they can't go back to the 24 hours. But the opposition has a cultural Marxist thing of wash, rinse, repeat. Wash, rinse, repeat. You don't know when the audience is going to cut in. O'Donnell of MSNBC kept saying this. People in Maine will tune in at a different hour than people in Colorado. Different hour than people in Nevada. Different hour than people in Arizona, these swing states. They took their 24 hours. We made a conscious decision to not. However, there was a different conversation, even among the pundits, after we presented our defense. You could see a little bit of the bite and the thing was taken out of them. Tubin really became, we flipped Tubin, right? We flipped Tubin. He was snarky to Dershowitz, but the air came out of him after that, right? You saw some of the other snarky guys had the edge taken off them. Yeah, I went back to whining, but my point is that here, so knowing where we are and knowing that they're going to use their time as a predicate to Bigfoot the president's message and to use it as a springboard on the continual impeachment process going forward, because it's not going to stop. How do you counter-program that?
So I would think of this. So President Trump is going to have his big contemporary state of the country, state of the world event on Tuesday night, and they're going to do everything they can to step on it. Again,
And right now we hear it's a unifying speech. He's going to talk about the things he's worked on, where he's going to take the country, the vision of the sunlit uplands.
Yeah, and the theme here is the great American comeback. It'll be some of the teasers that are out there. He's going to go hard on prescription drugs, sanctuary cities, which is all good to see. Foreign policy will be a big role, will have a big part, but they're not teasing that out yet because obviously you can't have foreign policy, dictated over a teaser from a deputy comms director at the White House. So
Right.
that doesn't work. That's just kind of protocol.
You can only get that in Book Deal Bolton's manuscript.
Right. But I want to offer something up that I'm sure the White House legal team is thinking of. The closing arguments that they use in their 2 hours, I would not purely use it just to go through and say, restating a lot of these things with Ukraine. This is what goes down in the history books.
Yes.
These are the final arguments. And I think it's key that we define the Democrats as failures. Failures with a purely partisan political agenda. They alleged all these things. It wasn't true. And I would almost do the same way that they opened up last Saturday, where they showed the video of Adam Schiff making up that entire phone call with President Trump. They alleged this, failure. They accused President Trump of this, failure. Lies, lies, lies. And paint this for the history books, that this is one big failure from the Democrats. And I would also take some time in there, hear all the other things that we could have been doing in this. Because again, when we go back,
The opportunity cost.
right, 100 years from now, when they go back and they're, maybe it's like the 14th president that they try to impeach, at that point, and they're going back and say, what did they say in the impeachment trial of Donald J. Trump? And they need to go back and make it very clear this was a partisan effort from the beginning. They tried this. They were failures. They lied about this. They ran a completely unfair process in the House, got to the Senate, but really add in that aspect of the messaging. So that's the key takeaway. The Democrats failed.
What and then do you start to drive all the narratives off his campaign off of that? That's the predicate. They failed. Here's my counter programming to them. Here's my counter programming to Bernie.
Absolutely, and I don't think there's anything wrong within there to put down here all the other things we could have been doing. Here's President Trump's vision. It'll set the left's hair on fire. But guess what? We're playing for the history books right now. So I think that because we're already past the whole witness vote, and so anything that is said by Republicans, the Trump defense team on Monday, this is what you want that chapter to look like in the history book. Your summary statement.
One last time, we're going to go to pandemic here in a second, but I want to get your thoughts on President Trump. We've called it the trial of the century, and the trial of the century is winding down with, as you described, these closing arguments. They'll be in the history books. But President Trump has referred to this as the crime of the century. The Chief Justice, would not let Senator Rand Paul even get the name of he who will not be named, right? The whistleblower. So we're still playing that game here in Washington. The crime of the century still sits out there, unformed, unargued. And we know from Jesse Waters and other people, when the president had an organized defense by Pat Cipollone and Jay Sekulow and Pam Bondi and Atticus Philbin, right, that who became the star, one of the stars here, people said, hey, I now understand it. The guy is innocent. It's not even a question. But we didn't get to the heart of the matter. The heart of the matter is the coup, right? The heart of the matter is the conspiracy against him. He knows that's the crime of the century. How do you address that going forward? And the president's got enough to deal with. You said the other day quite articulately, which I'm going to steal on Maria Bartiromo tomorrow, is that he's now a wartime president, okay? He's got the business of the nation and kind of a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic to deal with.
Right on cue, by the way.
Our production staff's the best. So tell me how you do that.
So, right, because I think there will be many in the Republican Party, especially those who are critical of President Trump and their statements for why
Want to
they're
move
saying
on.
who want to move on. Let me tell you why you can't. Because the Democrats aren't going to move on. And as we said earlier in the show, they already have those subpoenas ready. They have the lawsuits ready. They're going right after it. They
got more leaks of Lev Parnas tapes. They got more. Book Deal Bolton's got 5 other salacious comments.
Right. And here's the thing that, and again, I'm talking in purely political terms, but I don't want to diminish in any way the threat and severity of the coronavirus. President Trump's strong leadership on the coronavirus directly undercuts Democratic attacks to say that he is a weak foreign leader, or to say that he is some kind of corrupt foreign leader, or that somehow America's standing in the world has been diminished. I want to be very clear on that. And so as he takes this strong action, it shows the American public the shortcomings and the ineptitudes of the Democratic argument, saying that he's not a great foreign policy leader. This will only, seeing Trump's strong leadership against the coronavirus will only make Democrats more angry and more fired up to try to undercut him on foreign policy. So the so-called whistleblower who wasn't even on the phone call, the second whistleblower who disappeared, Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, his brother, who only happens to be the deputy counsel over at the NSC. Folks, it is a rat's nest over there.
Who's approving Bolton's book line by line?
In fact, I think what we need to set up.
I so don't get the whole thing.
So what we need set up at the White House, when you go into like the parking garages, they got those big rat traps, those big black boxes. We just need to set those up all around the White House and just put little pieces of cheese in there for Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, or for the so-called whistleblower to like, oh, let me go get my bam, and then we get snapped by the big massive trap. But they're all over there. It's infested, and they haven't gotten fired. They're still showing up to work at the White House or at the EEOB every single day. The Democrats are not going to stop. We have to get
Anonymous is still there. Anonymous is still there. You're over a year into it, 15 months into it.
Yeah, and where's the DOJ investigation? This is why Lindsey Graham and the Senate Republicans.
Do you think he's just blowing us off and giving happy talk, or do you think that's serious?
As far as the Senate investigations,
Yes.
or
yes.
I'm so cynical. I mean, again, I might be the most cynical person that you've met. I think it's all happy talk, and they're going to like.
Then how does it actually happen? You can't do this on TV. It has to be in an official venue. The venue we have is the Senate.
Right.
Is this President Trump just got to sit down with McConnell and these guys? Because you can tell, with the senators having, there's a certain level of decorum and gravitas. They think that the House is like House of Commons, House of Lords. It's kind of these grubby people that are always yelling at each other. They don't want that. Can you get a real set of hearings at the Senate, and can President Trump force that?
Absolutely. And I think what we have to tell them is that Democrats are not going to stop. Now, here's what I think is going to happen. I think the Republican senators are going to say, let's just let it go. We got past this impeachment thing. Let's go back to, fill in the blank, healthcare, prescription drugs, or, let's worry about this. Don't worry, Donald, we got this thing covered. We got to worry about the Senate. And then the Democrats will drop all their lawsuits and their investigations and introduce those and keep pushing. We need our allies in the Senate too. Senator Mike Braun, who's been a great champion here. Other Josh.
Do you think there's there's a feel that, and I could be wrong here, and I probably am wrong, but I want you to make me feel better, is there any chance that the reason some of this is stretching out is that there's some senators that, hey, this Bolton thing got dropped on us when we had the votes, maybe the guy should feel some pain?
Oh, of course.
You think so?
Oh, absolutely. You read through some of these statements and the way that these people have said, well, clearly did something wrong.
Rubio's and Alexander's were particularly had an edge to them.
They were pretty nasty, and they were pretty darn nasty. And these guys absolutely want the president to feel some pain. And I think they also, too, they probably think that, if we just go and make things really tough and miserable for President Trump, then maybe he won't say it like it is, and he won't. Maybe he'll just come around to our viewpoint on foreign policy, or maybe
it's not going to happen.
Maybe he'll come in.
You agree? That's a misread.
Yes, or maybe he'll invite us over for tea and crumpets and not for a lambasting. The thing is, President Trump's always going to bring the heat with everything that he does, and if we're not going to go and change behavior, change approach. I mean, President Trump got elected because of who he is.
Let's go to. You were particularly impressed yesterday with the press conference. I want to walk through particularly the way things are presented in the media, because some of us have been working on this and no pandemic, et cetera, thought it was good, but saw some holes in it. You said, hey, not, and because you're feeling a real team. Walk us through the way it was presented.
Yeah, so what reporters and many in the media will say behind the scenes is they view the Trump administration as being uncoordinated, disjointed, and some folks, depending on if they're a little more left to center outlets, may even say, make comments that border on clown car type comments. The gang that can't shoot straight.
Right.
And look, the administration has had a couple of things they could have done a little bit more perfectly.
A few of things could have been more close-run things, as the British say.
Yes, I think that's a better way to describe it than I did. But here's what yesterday showed. Showed that President Trump is on top of this.
Yep.
It showed that the people he has around him have a great grasp of the facts.
Yeah.
They understand the
A,
severity.
a real team of professionals.
Real team of professionals, and you could see that they were taking this both from number one, first and foremost, the national security aspect. That they'd really thought through this. Here, the travel restrictions, both for foreign nationals and even too. I mean, a little bit of the buried lead here. You referenced this yesterday. Quarantining Americans. And this is
Big league.
This is a big league thing.
That's a big league thing.
But guess what? You also correctly made the point. We're going to have to make tough decisions
Yes.
on this. And you know what? If someone has to get quarantined for 14 days, well, your choice to go to China.
He made some tough calls yesterday. That's what I thought. Haley Jackson's question was quite perceptive, but I mean, the president made some tough calls. I mean, that was an important set of policy prescriptions he put out yesterday.
Absolutely. And also for them to, I think it was strong to show that we want to go and have a team go over there to be part of the process to help the Chinese to try to come to a solution. But it also showed that, again, everything from national security to the health care and health and well-being side of things to transportation to all these different dynamics within the U.S. government were functioning as one. Some of these people are career people who aren't necessarily the political appointees. Some of these people are, definitely the Ken Cuccinelli types at Homeland Security. Showed they're working as a single team. It shows they have a clear vision of what we need to do, and it shows they're willing to make the tough choices. I thought this was strong because this isn't going to be your blazing headline on any of the major papers today, but really the undertone of that was these guys do actually know what they're doing.
Exactly. They got it. Here's the thing I think is amazing. This is more complicated than a military operation because, one, you get this civilian infrastructure, you have this logistics chain, it's global in its reach already, it's about individual liberties, and it's dealing with civilians, and we're so set. We have an apparatus, and you know how military operations are going to go. Now, some can be more successful than others, but there's a playbook you pull out, and you look at how things work together, how joint staffs work together. We're much more coordinated today than when I was in the Navy, and the services were kind of in competition. It's much more of a joint outlook today. This is totally uncharted territory.
It is. And going back to something that Dr. Hatfield said on last night's show, that this all becomes the grassroots operation. What are the local first responders?
Right.
What are the local medical professionals? How are they viewing this? Yesterday's press conference was a wake-up call to every local medical official, first responder, that we have to be serious on this. So it could be, Fort Dodge, Kansas. You just don't know where this is actually. And as you pointed out the other day, Steve, that's where the Spanish flu started
Haskell,
from.
Kansas, right? I didn't know that.
Right, Kansas. So
guess that's not Spain.
no, so you never know where these things are going to
Big
pop
time.
up, where an outbreak of these is going to happen. But this was the wake-up call to America, and it's also the clear signal from President Trump that he's on top of this.
I want to talk about also being on top of things and works that are being done. In this week that we had all the news and historic nature of the impeachment, only third time in the history of the Republic, the pandemic, right? All the Iowa caucus really start the challenge to President Trump and his presidency. USMCA signed. The Israel peace treaty put forward, Israel peace plan, once in a lifetime. And not just that, whether you agree with it or not, a complete rethinking of how you think about the problem, right? Ivanka's thing yesterday, human trafficking, another huge effort, right? And then Navarro's counterfeiting thing is massive. The whole counterfeit products thing. You've had four.
Oh, and hold on. And then you had the Kellyanne event cracking down on opioids and giving an update of where we are and showing that for the first time in a long time, the mortality rate in the U.S.
Yes.
or the life expectancy is going up because people aren't all ODing.
So those are five major, and I mean major, from USMCA's thing in Israel, which is inconceivable years ago to how to rethink it. It's fantastic. So those are like now everyday events, which are kind of any one of those would have dominated a news cycle for a week. Here, as much as they try to push it, this is not about the White House. You're doing great work, but it's just so overwhelmed by everything else. This is also the foundation of his victory in 2020. He's getting the work of the nation done, the hard stuff. The movement, when you move the Israel thing, you're moving the big muscles. When you do USMCA with Canada and Mexico, you're moving and making it a geostrategic manufacturing base. That's a big muscle. Opioids, that's a big muscle, right? The human trafficking thing is a global, it's like this pandemic. It's a global pandemic. These are big things, and you're seeing it come together. That's why I thought the press conference was important, because it showed you at one level hey, not only a team here, a pretty impressive team.
We've always said that the economy is going to be the determining factor for President Trump getting reelected in 2020. It could be national security and foreign policy. The thing that Democrats keep trying to say is President Trump's weakness, that could be the strength that gets him reelected. Keep an eye on that.
Okay, we're going to be back. Raheem will be in tomorrow with more updates on War Room impeachment. We're going to be with a 2-hour special with Dr. Stephen Hatfield and the rest of the team, General Robert Spalding, and others. We've asked Jason to sit in for the first few minutes to give our pandemic crowd an update. Stephen K. Bannon, how did they get to these? Since I don't have a team to pick on, is it warroom.org? How did they
Warroom.org is the website. We have things going all the time. The podcast. Subscribe to the podcast. Go to Apple, first and foremost, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, Luminary. We're there on all of them, and you can get it. It's all free.
Remember, I think is it Vish 1.8 million downloads now. We're live everywhere. So, okay, fantastic. Okay, we're going to be back in a moment with a 2-hour special, War Room Pandemic. We'll return in just a moment.